All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 141. Apologies, I was not able to record last week, so it's been 2 weeks since I recorded. Just work and personal life got so insane last week. There are not enough hours in the day sometimes to do everything that I need to do. I always say, I don't know how people with children do it because I personally only have myself to take care of, and I still struggle to get everything done in a day that I need to get done. So props to all the parents out there because I really have no clue how you do it. You must have extra hours somehow created in your day because it just feels impossible. But yeah, life got a little hectic, so wasn't able to record, but definitely lots to talk about today. Have a couple NBA topics and then a lot of random NFL off-season topics that I want to discuss. So we will get started with some of the NBA topics. First thing I wanted to touch on is that I have not recorded since Max Strus hit his game winner, second longest buzzer beater of all time from 59 feet away, which is insane. He launched that, and he was having an awesome game along with Donovan. Both of them were having a great day in particular, but it was really cool to watch him cap off that moment with launching it like that. I was not personally at that game. I was laying on my couch watching the game, and just the shock I experienced in that moment, my jaw was on the floor. I just couldn't believe that. And the Cavs have been very up and down lately, but it was good to have a moment like that coming after All-Star and feel some momentum. Obviously, they haven't quite been able to keep that up. We have Donovan Mitchell dealing with some injury issues currently that, in my opinion, aren't super clear. I feel like he's been battling with a lot of random stuff this year, sometimes sickness, but this kind of seems a little bit different than any of the other injuries that he has struggled with throughout the year. So definitely a little bit concerned there with the up and downs of this team and how poorly, honestly, they do without Donovan Mitchell on the court. I definitely have some concerns if this is going to be something more serious. So we will wait there, but definitely needed to touch on that game winner because that was a fun moment. The other big piece of NBA news that has happened in the last week was LeBron becoming the first NBA player ever to hit 40,000 career points. Obviously, since he already took up the number one spot, was that last season? Last season, he, only has upwards to go. He can just keep breaking his own record more and more. But hitting 40K just felt like such a special mark. And look, there's nothing really left for me to say on him because I feel like every time he breaks a new record, I come on here and I say the same thing every single time, just the argument for his greatness and for who he is. But just to watch him continue to hit these marks and for him to be breaking this record of hitting 40K points, never been done before at age 39. And you would think that at age 39, after it's his 21st season in the NBA, you would think that he would have lost a major step. Like he would not be even in conversations as top 20, 30 players in this league. You would think he would have dropped significantly. At age 39, with the endurance and strength that it takes to continue to play in this league, where so few play in this league, I feel like there's such a low chance for him to be having the success he is. And he's still such an important part of that Lakers team, an important player in the league, still can take over games when he knows he needs to. The fact that he is doing all of that is incredible. And it's not just, he hit 40K, but he's only, scoring 8-10 points a game and really struggling and coming off the bench. That's not the LeBron that we're getting at age 39. And it's really incredible. So very proud of him as always. I don't need to go through, all of my arguments. You all know how I feel. And I don't want to be too repetitive. I feel like sometimes I just say the same LeBron things all of the time. Okay, so that's all I wanted to touch on for NBA. Lots to get into for some NFL offseason stuff. I want to start off with the NFLPA report card. I actually love that they started doing this in the last couple of years. I'm not sure exactly when it it first started, but it's definitely been a more recent thing. And I think it's really good to have that kind of transparency. And I know why the Players Association wants to do that. They want the transparency with the fan bases, so the fan bases can push ownership and push coaching staffs to make the changes necessary so that it's not embarrassing about what's happening in their locker room and in their facilities, that hopefully those things can be better. And not only for fans to know that, but for other players to know that. If you haven't played in a certain organization, you might not know about what their nutritionist is like, or their weight room, or, their strength coaches, the things that aren't outwardly shown on the field. You might not know those things. And I think they want to hold these organizations accountable so that they can say, hey, if you want free agents to want to come to your team, free agents are going to look at these things and be like, gosh, they're ranked bottom 5 in almost every category. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be a part of that organization, especially veteran players who have established themselves and probably, just want to be in a more comfortable position. They're not going to want to do those things. So it's holding all of these organizations and owners accountable to just make things better. They have so much money. There's no excuse for them to have crappy services. And some of the stories you hear coming out for certain teams was crazy, like of players having to pay to not have a roommate, paying for certain things for families, just bad stuff all around that you continue to hear coming out from certain places. So the Browns report card overall, not great. Their highest ranking in any category in terms of, out of all 32 teams, what it looks like it was 17th for ownership, which is funny. They were like, thank you for paying us, Jimmy. We appreciate your money, opening up those pockets. Because honestly, I feel like that's probably what the most important thing is for ownership ranking, but ownership got a B. Interestingly, a lot of the other categories I would say were probably in the 20s range, somewhere in there. And their lowest ranking was 30th, a D for the weight room. I think this is something we have heard about. Kevin Stefanski actually mentioned this in some of his press conference, his media availability with everyone during the combine. He mentioned that they are building a new weight room. So it's good to know that this is a priority and something that they are working on improving. But yeah, quite a few other categories were bad. D+ for locker room, D for team travel. Just they didn't do well overall in a lot of these categories. So I'm hoping that they just want to continue to make these improvements. Like D- for treatment of families, that's unacceptable. That players are feeling like the team is not treating their families well. That's something that should be easily fixed and improved immediately. The one I found actually really interesting, and I am very curious on, is head coach got a B-, but it was 28th in the league. I was trying to look up when they fill out these rankings for the year, and I think it happens quite early on in the season, so I don't think this is a very end of the season thing from what I understood. So it wouldn't shock me for after last season and everything that went on that a lot of players weren't feeling as great about Kevin as they would maybe if they were to vote on this in the last 2 months after winning Coach of the Year. I would think that ranking would be a little higher. So if that is true, that timing would make a lot more sense. If it is not, and that he was truly ranked 28th and had a B-, it would be a little bit surprising to me just after how he was able to keep everything together with just all of the injuries and everything that went on this year. I would have thought that would be a little bit higher. So thought that was interesting to comment on. Also at the combine, Andrew Berry spoke. So I mentioned Kevin spoke, but I think this is like a really good time to listen to the GMs of the teams and just get some insight into what their mindset is for the offseason, whether it's free agency, whether it's re-signing players that are going to be free agents, the draft, just where their head's at with everything. We've had quite a few years now with both Kevin and Andrew Berry, so I think I have much more of an understanding, and I think we all have more of an understanding of who Andrew Berry is and how he just looks at the offseason and team building. Like, we've become pretty predictive as a team on how things are going to go. So none of that stuff is, I guess, as shocking or, new on how Andrew Berry looks at team building. But I did think there were a couple of comments and quotes that I wanted to quickly touch on, just on things that were asked about him. So he was asked once again about Nick Chubb's future, and this was his response. I'm going to read some direct quotes. He said, "I understand that Nick is a popular discussion point. I meant what I said about him at the end of the season. Any conversations that we have with him or his reps, honestly, will stay between us. If anything were to change with the status, you guys will be the first to know when that does happen. You guys know Nick. He works his tail off. He does everything in his power to make sure that he can recover as quickly as possible. It's still very early, and we're 6 months away from training camp, so to say anything more definitively than I did in the middle of January, it would probably be inaccurate." So nothing new here. Kind of like he said, everything's kind of far away in terms of the progression of his recovery. Obviously, like he said, Nick is going to do everything he can to recover as quickly as possible. And it feels like, he seems to be on track, but that doesn't mean he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season, because that's just not realistic. So I think these conversations are going to continue, and I still am of the belief that they're going to come to some type of agreement when, push comes to shove, that he's still going to be in Cleveland, and they're going to work on restructuring in whatever way they need to. Okay. They also asked him about trading the second round pick. Everyone knows Andrew Berry is infamous for trading down, just doing interesting things with his assets that aren't always just taking the pick where you have it. And his response kind of inferred as much. He said, "You know me, I can't keep money in my pocket, so we'll see how it goes over the next couple weeks." Kind of saying that, if there was, some player picks type trade he could make for that second round pick, he's ears for it. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we get closer to the draft. I know it sucks to not be able to pick higher, but I think, they're going to analyze everything in terms of what positions they're looking at, how many players are available in the top 100 players at those positions they're looking at, who they think they can get in certain spots. And if it makes sense to trade down, they're going to do it. So I know they do their homework on these things, so I wouldn't get too worked up about it. Look, we've had some great later round picks that have been staples of this organization in the past at least 2 off seasons. You had Martin Emerson, third round pick. So not in the, I think they had traded actually that second round pick away. So he was that first pick, and ended up being basically a first round value. So you can get great players at these points. You just have to really do your homework. Dwan Jones is another great example. I think he was a 4th rounder. So you can find these guys, but just have to be smart about it. It doesn't make watching the draft as fun either. It's so much more fun to watch the draft when you get to take guys higher, names that everyone knows, people are aware of. It's a lot more fun when that happens. So I understand it. He was asked about Ken Dorsey also, and his response was, "If you have a multi-billion-dollar organization and you're hiring a CEO position or COO position or a department head, think about the time and effort that would take to go into vetting candidates that would perform that function in your organization." And that's really how we think about it with our organization with the Browns. So Ken's right. He went through a battery of different items and he came out standing, and we're really excited about it. So that was kind of in reference to when Ken Dorsey said, he's never experienced such a thorough interview process when interviewing somewhere. And it goes back to what I was saying about, how the Browns do their homework in the draft. They do their homework for coaches too. They want to know if you're going to be a fit within the organization, and if your mindset as a coach and what you are going to bring to the table is going to fit. So I thought that was interesting. He also said about Ken, the allure to Ken was his varied experience in a number of different offenses, working with different styles of quarterbacks, and then ultimately just his work sample as a coordinator. We thought he fit us and our players. We love his expertise in the spread and RPO game and drop back world as well, and we think he's a fantastic addition to the staff. I thought that was interesting. He brought up the working with different styles of quarterbacks. I think that I touched on this when the hire was made, that that is a huge part of why they chose to bring him in, is because of that experience and how they think he might have the potential to help Deshaun Watson in a way that no one in the organization has been able to bring that perspective yet. And I think him working with those different guys is going to be really helpful. So good to see Andrew really validate that. And the last thing he mentioned was kind of that I thought was important, was an update on Deshaun. So he said Deshaun will begin throwing next month. So I don't know if this interview technically happened in February or March. So I don't know. Let's just say one month from now, maybe he will start throwing again. He also said he's worked his tail off in terms of his rehab and recovery. He's in a really good place. We're excited when the spring hits and we can get him back on the field, but he's making really good progress and we're really excited to see that continue. So good to know that he's going to be getting out there again, because look, this was a serious injury that and surgery that he has had to go through, and he's going to need a lot of time to get in the groove of things again and to get comfortable out there. So the earlier he can, the better, and it's good to see that that's going to be the case. Okay, so a couple of other random topics to touch on with the Browns that aren't combine related. One is Denzel Ward's contract was restructured. I believe this will be one of many restructures that's going to happen. The Browns converted $14.199 million of Denzel Ward's base salary into a signing bonus and added a void year, which frees up $11.35 million in cap space for 2024. Obviously, the cap for the season for everyone went up dramatically, but the Browns are always restructuring and creating more room so that they can sign different free agents. So that was one way that they are doing that, and there's probably more to come there. The rumor mill obviously has been going as, players are getting franchise tagged. We're figuring out who might be available to the Browns that could be of interest to them. And one name that has been coming up quite a bit lately is defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who currently is with the Miami Dolphins. That's been his most recent team. He's 28 years old. It seems like the Dolphins are not franchise tagging him. He also, interestingly, has the same agent and team as Deshaun Watson. So I feel like that's pretty notable when you think about negotiations and conversations that are happening. It's pretty easy for Mulgeta to just jump in there and have those conversations. It's funny, actually, the other team that is rumored to be interested in Christian Wilkins is the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud also sharing the same agent as both Deshaun and Christian. So I think all of those things do make sense and point to the fact that the Browns would be interested. Also, on top of the fact that, defensive tackle, as good as the defense was as a whole this past year, defensive tackle is still a weak point. And, they signed some shorter term deals at the position. So I think every offseason they're going to have to continue to fill gaps in that area and to bring in different talent. This past season, Wilkins had 65 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 2 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 forced fumble. He played in all 17 games. He also had a career high of 9 sacks last year. Before that, he had only had 4.5 sacks as a season high. So really big year from him in terms of getting after the quarterback. Pretty high double team rate at 65%, which, you got to know that if you're coming over to the Cleveland Browns with Myles Garrett, that's going to free you up a lot more. Probably won't see as high of a percentage in terms of that double team rate. So could get him more opportunities to get after the quarterback in a place like Cleveland. He was this past season ranked 13th in the league for defensive tackles and pass rush win rate. So pretty talented player overall, and someone that I think seems like a fit in terms of what the Browns are needing on the defensive side of the ball. It just kind of, it'll matter where he is interested in playing, and overall, if the money is right. I think, when you have those opportunities, I'm not sure what the Browns are going to want to put forward at defensive tackle. They have not really shelled up a ton of money at the position in the past, so something to keep an eye on there. I think one of the biggest pieces of news that happened this week, non-Browns related, was the Russell Wilson news that he is going to be released from the Denver Broncos. He's going to be released at the start of the league year on March 13th, but he'll be a post-June 1st cut so that they can spread out his money over 2 years, which, my God, they're going to need to do it because the amount of money that this team decided to pay that man is pretty crazy. So the Broncos are going to have to take on $85 million in total dead cap salary over the next 2 seasons with this release, which is obviously the largest in NFL history. We have not seen a dead cap hit quite that big. It's incredible that that amount is even possible, because it would feel like a couple years ago that wouldn't even be a possibility. But, it is because of the way the cap has increased over the last couple of years, especially since the COVID year, that it is very much possible to do that. At the same time, you don't want to be in that position. It is not putting the Broncos in a great place, and they're going to be struggling. They're going to have to really try to hit on some draft picks and rebuild in that way, because it's going to be hard to shell up some money with having to pay that for a guy that is going to be on a different team. I am so interested to see where he ends up. One spot I'd really be interested to see that was actually on Russell Wilson's list when he first was talking about leaving Seattle, and that's Vegas. I wonder if that's one of the only ones that was on his list then that I think still makes sense now. And I just feel like he wants to be a part of like a media kind of spectacle city in that way. So I could see him going there. Somewhere that hasn't been mentioned a lot, but I feel like should be, is the Giants, because I just feel like Daniel Jones is not going to be it. And I think I could see him wanting to be in New York. So I think there's a ton of spots for him that are a real potential overall. Along with that, the other kind of piece of news in terms of quarterbacks that has been, I guess, more linked to the Browns most recently actually is, would Justin Fields be a fit on the Cleveland Browns? This was an interesting one. So I personally don't see this in any world happening. One, I've been talking about this kind of Mulgeta agent connection throughout, guys, where it makes sense for, with the Christian Wilkins, for him to have interest in Cleveland and for that connection to be really easy. I don't see a world where Justin Fields, who does share a agent with Deshaun Watson, that agent is going to want to be like, yeah, Justin, you should come to Cleveland and disrupt what Watson is doing in that city. I just don't see that being the case, but gosh, you never really know if there's strong interest from both sides, and if there's interest from the Bears to make that happen and the money's right for the Browns. Like, I don't know. So I don't think it's like fully based on the agent and what he is doing. But I do think that puts a little bit of a wrinkle in that idea. Look, the idea that people are putting out there, I've seen it from Ben Solak from The Ringer. I've seen it from a couple of other people saying that maybe if, Justin Fields isn't going to start somewhere, Cleveland would be a good landing spot for him. One, he's, a mobile quarterback. He is young. He can, be an insurance if Deshaun Watson is to get injured again, which he has dealt with many injuries in his career, is coming off one right now. The Browns need some type of safety to be put in place. And look, I am of the belief for sure that the Browns need to be game planning for the future at the quarterback position, whether it is continuing to draft quarterbacks, whether it is continuously looking at the market. You cannot be comfortable at any point in time and just be like, yeah, we have our guy, even though he hasn't proven to be that at this point in time. So I'm all for the Browns going out there and looking at things. I think they should continue to try, if they have later round picks where they really like someone at quarterback, I think you should try to do that. And maybe you end up hitting on someone that can take over once Watson's contract is over. Who knows? So I don't mind people speculating that maybe Justin Fields could be someone that they could bring in as a backup. I just have to believe that with how many teams have a need for quarterback, he has to end up somewhere. And that the Browns aren't going to want to pay that much for a backup to bring him in, to bring Justin Fields in that way. So interesting. I like the thought. I like that, people understand that the Browns are a very future-oriented organization and that this is how they operate. I just personally, I don't really see this one happening. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is Jason Kelce officially announced his retirement. I'm actually recording this kind of right after the Cavs game against the Celtics, where Jason and Travis attended for their bobblehead night. They had a nice little moment for Jason on the Jumbotron, little video compilation honoring him and his career. He was holding up a nice Cleveland Heights t-shirt, just hometown boys back. They had Cavs jerseys with Kelce on the back and their numbers, which was really cool. I'm sure it's special for them to feel like they're being honored in their hometown in that way, especially considering how much they talk about Cleveland. Very cool. But my God, Jason Kelce's goodbye retirement press conference was so emotional. I was tearing up the entire time. He was so well-spoken, so thoughtful with everything he said, kind of going through each stage of his career and who affected him and what his mindset was, how meaningful his family is to him, how meaningful playing at the same time as his brother in this league, and, all of their hopes and dreams growing up and what they were both able to become. His love for his wife, Kylie, just all of it was so lovely and wonderful. And I have to say, I think it is so nice that they just wear both of them, Travis and Jason, wear their emotions on their sleeves so much, because I think football is such a macho world sometimes. And look, both of them are tough guys too. They go out there and they're yelling at people, they're ready to fight, they're ready to go at it, but aren't also afraid to show their emotions when they are, feeling it. I think that is a really good example, honestly, to see that you can still be a tough football guy and a killer and a winner at the game, and also be just a person who is okay with showing their emotions. Those two things can exist at once. And I think that's important for not just football guys, but I feel like men in general to be able to see that. So I thought that was really sweet, just watching his family sitting there and all of them so emotional. He pulled up his phone at the beginning to start reading off of what he was going to say. And he just kind of looked at everyone and was like, all right, we'll see how long this lasts, saying we'll see how long me not crying lasts. And then immediately bursted into tears after he said it. I was like, oh, Jason, I wanted to give him a hug. I felt so bad seeing him so upset. It's got to be emotional. 13 years with the same organization, after, being not starting in college, he wasn't even highly recruited, wasn't a scholarship guy at first. A very low round draft pick. It was either the 6th or the 7th round that he went in, and to be for sure a Hall of Fame center now is such an accomplishment. And I'm sure reflecting on all of that, it has to be so emotional, and just it means a lot to him. So very cool to see, very sad to have another great one go, but his whenever his ceremony in Canton, Ohio is going to happen is going to be a great and wonderful day, because he will for sure be getting that gold jacket. Looking forward to that. All right, so that is all I have for you guys today. Again, sorry for not recording last week. Sometimes it gets choppy here in the NFL offseason, and just because I have other responsibilities, but I love being able to do this. So going to try to keep up with the Tuesdays as much as I possibly can. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you could share with a friend, I would very much appreciate it. Leave a review or rating, follow, subscribe, comment on the YouTube, subscribe on the YouTube. That is very important to me, so please do it. I feel like the YouTube has been slowing down lately, so let's get it going a little bit more. I appreciate y'all so much for listening, and as always, go Browns.